Lance is different now, and oh boy do I have opinions. Overall, I think I'm positive about the new form of Lance, and I'm going to use this video to explain why I think that Wild's Lance, while feeling really difficult and having a fair few niggles, is actually really good and a great step in the right direction. Or I'm going to go on a tangent and I'm going to end up complaining about the changes halfway through. I guess you'll see. In a similar fashion to the Lance, the beta test itself was also something that allowed for lots and lots of opinions to be formed. My PC was powerful enough for it to not encounter the now rather infamous origami monsters, but I have had some serious FPS drops, so I've had to cap my frames per second to 40 to try and regain some sort of stability while maintaining as much visual quality for you all. But the biggest problem that I had was that the game kept crashing. I think because my computer was on the absolute limits of VRAM for the game, alongside also trying to record footage of the game while I was playing, and unfortunately it's also caused quite a lot of my footage to be corrupted. And because of that, I've decided to start allowing YouTube memberships, and I've opened up a tip jar or a Patreon or whatever to start a computer upgrade fund. Links below, and I'll talk more about it at the end of the video. So I think the best way to start is to talk about the overall reception of how Lancers have been feeling about the new Lance in Wilds. So scouring the internet, I've come up with 3 big criticisms that I'm seeing a lot. 1, it's slow. 2, it's clunky. And 3, it fails to deliver on the fantasy of Lance. The Lance's slowness is pretty easy to show off, as it's just an objective thing. And I think this clip by username I don't know numbers 123 does a really good job at showcasing how much slower the Lance's movement is in Wilds compared to how it was in World or Iceborne's. Long story short, the Lance is physically much slower than in World, and certain moves have a bunch of extra end lag on them that can make it feel a little bit like you're moving through water. Maybe all the water iconography in the logo and the main menu screens was a sign after all. The clunkiness, however, is a very broad feeling, so I've tried to divide it into 3 smaller and objectified criticisms. 1, the new moveset is weirdly inconsistent. Leaping thrust can be done from neutral and from guard dash, but will have different starting and ending lags depending on which version of the leaping thrust that you're doing, and it will also have different button combinations to activate it. This, along with the 3rd point here, leads to a sort of feeling of confusion within the moveset that makes using the Lance feel clunky. Secondly, the new moves are really difficult to land. Payback thrust makes you jump forward and has loads of extra height to the attack, and that leads to me missing loads of the hits as my Lance sort of slides under and around monsters' heads just before the character thrusts it up forwards. Thirdly, the new moves seem to break one of the underlying rules of Monster Hunter combat. The triangle button, or the Y button, the button that's on the top, is normally your weapon's high power attack, while your circle or B button, the button on the right hand side, is used for your attacks that do less damage but have fancy technical aspects to them. So if you think of the longsword, the Helm Splitter uses the triangle, while the Foresight Slash uses the circle button. If you think of the Switch Axe's sword mode, your triangle attacks tend to be best for damage dealing, while your circle button attacks are better for powering up your gauge. The problem is that a lot of the follow-up moves feel the wrong way around. Returning thrust, the weak but fast response to our new parry attack, is placed on the triangle button, while payback thrust has been placed on the circle button, which is the wrong way around. Similarly, countercharge, a really powerful move by the way, should be on the circle button because it's a charge up counter type move that's very techy, while the triple thrust attack should be on the triangle button as it's a big strong attack, but once again, they're reversed. Obviously, muscle memory is muscle memory, and I'm sure we'll all get used to the button layouts. They are new moves after all, but it's a strange inconsistency with the rest of the control schemes that the game has. And I think it's creating confusion that is helping build this feeling of clunkiness that Wild's Lance has. Now, if anything that I've said resonates with how you feel, then I have good news. Capcom are taking feedback. I'll place a link to it in the description, but you can give your thoughts about the demo, and if you feel like it's worth mentioning them, you can report about how you feel about the Lance, or the performance of the game, and maybe they'll tweak it for the main release. Finally, I think that one of the biggest undercurrents about the Lance and the negative reception that it's had in the Wilds demo is that it doesn't fulfill the Lance fantasy, the fantasy of being an unstoppable shield. Lance embodies the idea of taking whatever you get given from the monster and throwing it right back in its face. With the slow power creep of weapons like the longsword and the switch axe getting better and better counterattacks, while the Lance is leaning towards a parry or bust mechanic with a new counter system that doesn't protect the user from chip damage. Lance just doesn't feel powerful enough, and that big old shield is starting to feel like a liability instead of a safety net. But on the other hand, Lance is pretty swish, and I'd like to defend it. So, loads of people are describing the Lance as clunky, and it could be clunky, but it could also just be growing pains. The new Lance in Wilds is very different, and assuming that it will function in a similar way to the way that Lance worked in World or Rise, will have you leaving damage on the table and possibly even leaving you not to have fun with the weapon. Obviously, take this with a pinch of salt, as we've only had a weekend to play the demo, so no one is going to understand how to use the weapon optimally yet, but from my experience, new Lance, the Lance in Wilds, is all about the new fourth poke options. When you're playing with World Lance, it revolved around doing the triple thrust combo as much as possible and looping them as fluidly as possible by timing your counterattack combo resets in line with monster attacks to basically never stop attacking. New Wild Lance, on the other hand, views the triple poke bread and butter combo as a vessel to get you to your new and much more powerful counter charge or triple thrust attacks that come on the fourth poke option. So getting to them as fast or as opportunely as possible is crucial to making the weapon feel good, and the clunkiness that we're feeling could actually just be us adapting to the new features and the new ways to play the Lance. So leading on, let's talk about what's great with Wild's Lance. First and foremost, it's gotten an animation overhaul, and that makes it look amazing. All of the attacks just ooze style and flair, and it looks really powerful, and that's awesome. It's fun to watch cool things happen. But more importantly than watching cool things happen is doing cool things. The new moveset creates a ton of potential for skill expression. The new guard/parry move is really cool. You get rewarded for timing it right, and you get 3 different options to respond, each of which has a decent reason to be used in different circumstances. If the monster is leaving itself exposed and vulnerable after an attack, then pressing both triangle and circle to do a really powerful riposte, and then to immediately enter the powered up charge state of the charge of the dash attack leads to massive damage, and because it's a charge attack, your positioning is really important, and so it's going to feel really, really rewarding to get loads of them off in a hunt. If your positioning isn't perfect, you can still choose to go for a payback thrust for still great damage, although I think all of the motion values for Lance in Wilds feel a little bit low. But the payback thrust very quickly leads to one of the fourth poke options, allowing for further counter shenanigans via countercharge, or for quick access to the triple thrust. Alternatively, if you get a really short window from the parry, then you can just use the return thrust to claw back extra damage where you wouldn't otherwise be able to, and combo into the chain that leads towards the fourth poke option. We've also been given access to focus mode and its interesting interaction with mid thrust that allows us to strafe, and it also makes mid thrust a legitimately useful part of Lance's kit rather than something that you would only use if you couldn't hit with your high thrust. Wide sweep has also been changed, making it a high damage, high commitment move that replaces one of the triple pokes, and its extra length has a secondary value of allowing you to better control how long it takes for you to reach the fourth poke option in the chain. And that's really valuable in combination with Charged Counter, which is a new version of the counter attack that does some hefty damage if used to counter a monster's attack, while also negating any chip damage that you might have taken, which in theory allows us to remove guard from our armor sets, which will be huge later on in the game. But you'd have to use it well to be able to make use of it. And I guess the other caveat is we don't actually know how the armor set side of things will work yet, so who knows if there's even guard in the game. Finally, and this is the single best thing, the biggest and coolest reason why Wild Lance is just the bomb is that we can joust each other. And as self-proclaimed joust champion, that makes up for all past transgressions, and Wild Lance is the best iteration of Lance that we have ever seen. Time for some opinions, and for me to share how I feel. And to be honest, I'm really mixed. I had a huge amount of fun playing the demo, but I also feel like there was something off about the whole thing. And I can't quite put a finger on it, so I'm not sure if I can chalk it up to Lance being clunky, or if it was my own personal tech issues with the demo and all the crashing. If I look at the Lance's chunky please fix side of things, I think that the slowness of Lance is undeniable. And I think it would be nice to have a motion value bump to counteract the slowdown, especially if the consensus about World Lance was this is a really perfect Lance, just bump the motion values up. Overall, I understand the negativity around Wild's version of Lance, but I don't want to discount the new way of Lance just because it's new. I started making this video on the basis of, guys, new Lance is good actually, because I wanted to share the other side of the argument, and I was seeing a lot of Lance doom posting, but after making this video, I don't know if I can actually say that I like the new version of the Lance, or if I'm just holding on to hope that once the game comes out and we have time to actually play with it, we'll get used to it, and then all of the really cool potential stuff will become really cool actual stuff, and it'll feel fluid again. Ultimately, as a call to action, I think it's worth reminding people Capcom have a survey link, which is going to be the best place to share your thoughts and feelings with Capcom, and is probably the best chance to make any changes or to push for any changes that you might want to have happen to the game, be it performance-wise or gameplay-wise. Either way, I think it's worth considering, and the demo was free, so it's probably worth doing out of obligation anyway. Plus you get a cute sticker or something. This is also a good time for me to double down in asking for your help with supporting the channel. I want to make cool Lance content for all of you when Wilds drops, regardless of how the weapon ends up, and I've got loads of other plans for Wilds' release. But to do those things, it's time that I started to ask for your support via YouTube memberships, Patreon, or money in a tip jar. If you'd like to support the channel and you are in a position to do so, the links will be in the description. I only want your support if you're actually in a position to give me support. If you're not able to give me money, then you can still support me by boosting the video's engagements, by having loads of chats in the comments and liking the video. But if you can support me with money, that would be amazing. And to start with, it's going to go towards a PC upgrade so that we can have a better visual quality for the Wilds videos. After that, I've got a bunch of other cool ideas I'd like to try for supporters, like a Discord to hang out, and possibly some additional videos that might not quite be the vibe for the channel, and so, you know, the algorithm gods say, do not post this here. Finally, to sum it all up, I'm excited. I've been flip-flopping over how the Lance feels and whether or not I like Lance's new direction for the last weekend. Now that the demo is gone, I find myself wishing to have it back. So even if the Lance is clunky and the game's performance is bad and crashing every hour, I had a lot of fun and I'm really looking forward to Wild's eventual release. So that's all for this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe, but more importantly, once you've subscribed, hit the little bell icon, as that's the real subscribe button, and that way you'll keep my videos appearing in your recommended feeds so that you can find them. I hope you've all had a great time with the demo as well, and I'll see you next time. And as the self-proclaimed Joust champion, that makes up for all How can I be a Joust champion if I can't say the word transgressions?